I froze in the middle of my office, coffee growing cold in my hand as my phone screen lit up with a notification from my banking app. $50,000. Gone. The entire family reunion fund I had spent 2 grueling years building, vanished in an instant. My heart pounded so loudly I could barely hear the hum of my desk phone. The words on the screen blurred as hot, bitter shock rose in my chest. I'm Emily Parker. I'm 29, and for as long as I can remember, I've been the responsible one, the provider, the fixer, the glue that held my family together after we lost Dad. While my younger sister, Madison, floated through life on charm and good looks, I worked 2 jobs to help pay off Mom's mortgage. I built my own small interior design business from scratch in Denver, and when things finally stabilized, I started setting aside money for something special, a family reunion to mark the 5-year anniversary of Dad's passing. A chance to bring us together, to honor him, to heal. That was supposed to be my gift to all of us. But now, it was gone. Emily? Everything okay? Jake's voice cut through my daze. He leaned against the doorframe, his easy grin quickly fading when he saw my face. Jake Thompson had been my best friend since college. He knew every look I had, and this was new. The money, I managed to whisper. The reunion fund. It's gone. All of it. Jake stepped inside, closing the door gently behind him. His eyes flickered with concern, but also something else, hesitation. Listen. I was going to tell you sooner, but I didn't know how. Madison is getting married this weekend. Up in Aspen. Mountain Crest Resort. I blinked, trying to process his words. What? She didn't tell me. I know, he said, his voice low. They're calling it a family reunion, but it's her wedding. I sank into my chair, my stomach twisting into knots. Pieces I hadn't even realized were missing began to click into place. The vague, save the date, comments from my mom weeks ago. Madison's Instagram posts, pictures of white floral arrangements and scenic mountain backdrops, disguised as lifestyle content. Comments from mutual friends that I'd brushed off, can't wait for this weekend. When I had no idea what they were talking about. I felt sick. I pressed the call button on my phone, dialing my mother. My hand trembled as I held it to my ear. Hi, sweetheart. Mom answered, voice bright, too bright. How's work? Mom, is something happening this weekend I should know about? A pause. Too long. Oh, just the family reunion, honey. You said you were too busy with work, remember? I never said that, I said, my voice steady but cold. I never even got an invitation. Another pause. Then, softer, Emily, please don't start. You always make things so complicated. My knuckles whitened around the phone. Is Madison getting married? Silence. Then, the sigh. It was supposed to be a surprise. We didn't want you to overreact. Overreact. I was paying for a wedding I wasn't even invited to, and I was the one overreacting? I ended the call before she could twist the knife any deeper. My pulse was racing, but my face stayed frozen, calm, a skill I had perfected over the years. Jake was watching me carefully. What are you going to do? I dialed my Aunt Lisa next. She answered on the second ring. I was wondering when you'd call, she said quietly, like she had been expecting this. Did you know? My voice was tight. Yes. I wanted to tell you, but Madison thought it would, 'cause issues. 'Cause issues? I snapped. They stole my money. Lisa sighed, the weight of loyalty versus truth evident in her voice. She thought you'd take over, make it all about you. That's what she said. My eyes burned, but no tears came. They never did. Not for this family. Make it about me. I was the one who had kept this family afloat after Dad died. I paid for Mom's surgery when her insurance wouldn't cover it. I bailed Madison out when she maxed out her credit cards for the 3rd time. I was the bank, the safety net. And now? I was the outsider. Excluded. Cut out, while they all drank champagne in Aspen, on my dime. The realization hit me like a brick to the chest. They hadn't just stolen my money. They had stolen my place in this family. I stood up slowly, the rage settling deep in my bones, turning cold. For the first time in my life, I wasn't going to fix things. I wasn't going to be their crutch. I was going to make them pay. I looked at Jake, whose concern had now turned to curiosity. I need your help. His eyes lit up with a hint of mischief. I thought you'd never ask. What's the plan? I grabbed my coat, my mind already racing. First, we go shopping. I need the perfect dress for a wedding I wasn't invited to. As we left my office, my phone buzzed. A text from Madison. Mom told me you know. Please don't ruin this for me. For once, can't you just let me have something? I slid the phone back into my purse without replying. My lips curled into a faint smile. Oh, Madison. You have no idea what's coming. What would you do if your family betrayed you like this? Sit back and take it? Or, would you make them regret it? Comment 111 if you think I was treated unfairly. I sat in my car outside my office after that text from Madison, fingers gripping the steering wheel so tightly my knuckles turned white. I could still hear her words buzzing in my ears. Please don't ruin this for me. For once, can't you just let me have something? My breath came out in short bursts, my chest tight with frustration. Let her have something? As though I hadn't given her everything my entire life. As though I hadn't been the one holding all the broken pieces of this family together since I was 16. The engine hummed beneath me, but I didn't start driving. Instead, I stared ahead, the snowy peaks of the Rockies visible in the distance. That view had always brought me comfort. Not today. Today, it stirred something else, a bitter ache, tangled with exhaustion and anger. I closed my eyes, and the memories came flooding back. I was 15 when my dad left for work that morning and never came home. He was a foreman at a coal mine near Crested Butte, a hard worker, proud of the life he'd built for us, even if it was modest. That day, there was a collapse. 3 men died. My father was one of them. I still remember the officer standing on our porch, his hat in his hands, telling my mom, Karen, that her husband wasn't coming back. I remember the way she collapsed onto the floor, wailing like an animal in pain. I remember holding Madison, only 12 at the time, as she sobbed into my shoulder, asking over and over, what are we going to do now? What we did was survive. Mom fell apart for a while. She took a job at a local diner, working late shifts, barely keeping us afloat. I stepped up. I had no choice. I got a job after school, stocking shelves at the grocery store. Weekends, I cleaned cabins at a nearby ski lodge. I'd come home with my fingers raw and my back aching, but I never complained. Someone had to make sure the bills were paid. Someone had to keep Madison in school. Mom always said she was proud of me, but her attention was elsewhere, on Madison. Madison was the baby, the one who needed protecting, the one who reminded her of Dad. She was pretty, with her soft blonde curls and big blue eyes, and everyone adored her. Teachers, neighbors, boys, they all flocked to her. She had this effortless charm that made people want to help her. I wasn't like that. I had to work for everything. When I graduated high school, I wanted to go to college. I had the grades, but we didn't have the money. So, I stayed. I took a job as a receptionist at an interior design firm in Denver, learning everything I could on the side. I saved every penny. After a few years, I started my own business, Parker Interiors. Small at first, but it grew. I built a reputation for being reliable, meticulous. I took on commercial projects, renovated offices, staged homes for realtors. It was hard work, but it paid off. And with every dollar I earned, I thought of them, my family. When Mom's roof started leaking, I paid for the repairs. When Madison racked up $12,000 in credit card debt during her sophomore year of college, I covered it so she wouldn't ruin her credit. When she dropped out 2 semesters later, I paid her rent until she figured things out. I never told anyone how much it drained me, financially, emotionally. Because that's what family does, right? You give, and you don't expect anything back. But sometimes, I wished someone would ask if I was okay. Last year, Mom got pneumonia. She was in and out of the hospital for weeks. I was the one who stayed with her overnight, bringing her soup, talking to doctors. Madison visited once, took a few photos for Instagram, captioned them "grateful for family," then went out for brunch with friends. When the bill came, nearly $14,000 after insurance, I paid it. Madison never even asked how much it was. I remember sitting alone in my apartment that night, staring at the receipt, wondering how the hell I had become the person who carried everyone else's weight. Wondering if anyone even noticed. But I pushed it down. That's what I did. Always. Because someone had to be the strong one. So when I started saving for the family reunion, our first real gathering since Dad died, it felt like more than just a trip. It was my way of bringing us back together. Of finally creating something good out of all the struggle. I imagined us standing by the lake in Estes Park, raising a glass to Dad, laughing, reconnecting. I never imagined that the money I'd carefully put aside, month after month, skipping vacations, working weekends, would be stolen to fund a wedding I wasn't even invited to. I opened my eyes, staring at my reflection in the rearview mirror. My face was tight with anger, but beneath it, there was something else, hurt. I had given them everything. And they had treated me like I was nothing. I thought back to every time Madison had called me in tears because she'd maxed out her cards again. Every time Mom had asked me to just cover the utilities this month. Every time I'd bitten my tongue when they praised Madison for being so resilient, while I was the one keeping the lights on. Had they ever really seen me? Or was I just their safety net, the invisible hand holding them up? I thought of Dad. He would have been heartbroken to see what we had become. Tears threatened, but I blinked them away. I didn't have time to cry. Not anymore. I picked up my phone and scrolled through Madison's Instagram. There it was, hidden in plain sight. Captions like "can't wait for the weekend," with pictures of white roses and champagne flutes. Comments from friends, "it's going to be gorgeous. So happy for you, Mads." And I was nowhere in sight. I called Mom again. This time, there was no pretense. "You took my money," I said, voice shaking but steady. "You lied to me." "Oh, honey, don't be so dramatic. It's just money. You're doing well." Madison needed this. I hung up before I said something I couldn't take back. I called Aunt Lisa next. At least she was honest. "I wanted to tell you," she said softly. But Madison was worried you'd take over. Take over. As if I hadn't earned that right. As if I hadn't paid for it 10 times over. I sat in the silence of my car, gripping the steering wheel again. This wasn't about money anymore. This was about respect. About being seen. About showing them that I wasn't just their wallet. Jake texted me, "You okay?" I stared at the screen before typing back, "Not yet. But I will be." Because I wasn't going to let them get away with this. Have you ever given everything to someone, only to realize they never valued you? Comment 222 if you've ever felt taken for granted. The drive to Aspen felt like crossing into enemy territory. The snow-dusted peaks loomed above me, pristine and untouched, while my chest boiled with something far from pure. Betrayal, humiliation, anger, those emotions coiled tightly inside me like a spring, ready to snap. The crisp mountain air should have been refreshing, but it felt suffocating. I gripped the steering wheel until my knuckles turned white, the winding roads blurring into the storm brewing in my head. I kept replaying Madison's text over and over, "Please don't ruin this for me. For once, can't you just let me have something?" Something? Had she really convinced herself that my money, my sacrifices, my life, were just hers for the taking? I wasn't coming to this wedding to make a scene. Not yet. I needed answers. I needed to see their faces when they realized I wasn't going to be their silent piggy bank anymore. The Mountain Crest Resort was every bit as stunning as Madison's Instagram had promised. Floor-to-ceiling windows framed the peaks in the distance, and warm golden lights glittered from the lodge's wraparound porch. Guests in designer coats sipped hot toddies by outdoor fireplaces, laughing like they had not a care in the world. It was the kind of place I had dreamed of bringing my family for our reunion, the dream I had worked 2 years to build, stolen right out from under me. I checked in smoothly, name-dropping Madison Parker as the bride. No one questioned me. I belonged here, because I had paid to belong here. As I stepped into the lobby, I spotted my mother first. Karen stood by the front desk, perfectly put together in a navy wool coat, her pearl earrings catching the light. She froze when our eyes met. For a split second, I saw guilt flicker across her face, but it was quickly replaced by something colder. "Emily," she said, her voice tense but calm. "What are you doing here?" "I think you know," I replied. "I thought this was a family reunion." Her eyes darted around, making sure no one was listening. "Let's not do this here." She guided me toward a quieter corner by the stone fireplace, lowering her voice. "Look, I understand you're upset, but this is Madison's special weekend. We didn't want any tension." "Tension?" I scoffed. "You stole $50,000 from me." "Emily, it was just a misunderstanding. We'll figure it out after the wedding." I stared at her, trying to find the mother who had once comforted me after Dad died, the mother who I stayed up with for nights on end when she was sick. But all I saw was someone who had chosen her favorite, again. Before I could respond, Madison swept into the room like a goddamn queen. She was glowing, hair in soft waves, makeup flawless. She wore a white dress, not her wedding gown, but something designer, draped just so to suggest effortless elegance. Her eyes widened when she saw me. Then, she smiled, all fake sweetness. "Emily. You made it," she chirped, voice loud enough to draw eyes from the other guests. "I thought you were too busy with work." My blood boiled, but I forced a smile. I wouldn't miss it for the world. She leaned in, her voice dropping to a hiss. "What are you doing here?" "Supporting my sister on her big day. Isn't that what family's for?" Her smile tightened. "Let's talk upstairs." In her suite, the facade cracked. "You can't be here," she snapped the moment the door closed. "You'll ruin everything." "Ruin what, Madison? The wedding I paid for?" She crossed her arms. "Don't be so dramatic." I laughed, cold, bitter. "That's what Mom said." "Is that the line you all rehearsed?" "Emily, look, we were going to pay you back. You're doing fine, you didn't need that money." The casual way she said it, like my 2 years of saving, my skipped vacations, my working Saturdays, like it was nothing. Like I was nothing. I needed that money for our family reunion, to honor Dad. "Do you even remember him?" Her face hardened. "Of course I do. He'd want us to be happy." I stepped forward. "Happy? Or lying and stealing from each other?" She opened her mouth to respond, but there was a knock. Ryan. Her fiancé. He was handsome, in a clean-cut, boy-next-door kind of way. He lit up when he saw me. "Emily." Finally. I was wondering when we'd meet. Madison stiffened beside me. "I've heard so much about you," he continued. "Thank you for everything. Your mom and Maddie told me how you insisted on covering the costs. It's so generous." My heart stopped. My throat tightened. "They, what?" He frowned. "They said you wanted to help pay for the wedding. That it was important to you, especially after your dad." Madison interrupted, practically shoving him out of the room. "Babe, we'll see you downstairs, okay?" When he left, I turned on her. "You lied to him?" She shrugged. "What was I supposed to say? That we stole from you?" My hand shook. Ryan thinks I offered to pay? It made things easier, she muttered, not meeting my eyes. He's already paying off his student loans. We didn't want to stress him out. I was speechless. It wasn't just theft, it was rewriting reality. Turning me into their willing benefactor. Like my money didn't matter because, to them, it never had. I needed air. I stormed downstairs, my thoughts racing. That's when I heard it. Madison's voice, carrying from around the corner where she whispered to Mom. Emily's freaking out. She'll get over it. She always does. I mean, she's got plenty of money. What's 50 grand to her? My heart cracked wide open. I wanted to scream, to throw something, but I didn't. Instead, I stood there, letting their words settle into my bones. That was what they thought of me. That was who I was to them. A wallet. An endless resource. Someone who would always forgive, always fund, always come back, no matter what they did. They weren't even sorry. I walked outside into the cold night air, trying to catch my breath. Jake called. How's it going? He asked. It's not, I said, voice tight. They don't care, Jake. They think I'll just roll over like always. Are you? I thought of every bill I had paid, every late night in the hospital, every tear I had swallowed for their sake. No, I said, the steel in my voice surprising even me. Not this time. What's the plan? I looked back at the glowing windows of the resort, the warm, picture-perfect facade hiding the rot beneath. I thought of Ryan, blissfully unaware of the truth. I thought of my father, who would have been ashamed of what we had become. I'm not sure yet, I admitted. But I'm done being their doormat. A pause. Good, Jake said. Because I've got your back, whatever you decide. I hung up and stood there for a long time, watching the lights of the resort flicker against the dark mountain backdrop. I wasn't sure what my next move would be. But I knew one thing, I wasn't leaving this place without making damn sure they regretted ever underestimating me. Have you ever reached that breaking point, the moment you realized you were done letting people walk all over you? Comment 333 if you think it's time for me to fight back. I left the biting cold of that mountain night with my decision made. I wasn't going to explode in public, not yet. I had seen the cracks in their story, the weaknesses in their lies, and I intended to break them from the inside out. I was done being the quiet, responsible one. If they thought I would swallow this betrayal like every other time, they were about to learn exactly who they'd underestimated. I walked back into the warmth of the resort, past smiling guests who had no idea what was brewing beneath the surface. I forced my lips into a polite smile as I passed the concierge, but inside, my mind was already racing. Every betrayal has a paper trail. And I was going to find it. The moment I reached my room, I locked the door, kicked off my heels, and called Jake. You were right, I said, skipping any pleasantries. They lied about everything. Madison told Ryan that I offered to pay for the wedding, made it sound like I was some generous benefactor. Jake swore under his breath. So, what's the play here? I need you to dig. I want to know where every dollar went. Every transaction, every invoice. Start with Mom's accounts and Madison's. Look for anything tied to this resort. Jake's background in finance had saved me more times than I could count. He worked with small business owners like me, helping clean up the kind of messes people thought they could hide. But this time, it was personal. You want me to go that far? His voice was careful, like he was asking if I was sure. I want everything, I said firmly. I don't care if it burns every bridge. I need to know. There was a pause. All right, he said. I'll start tonight. I hung up and stared at the ceiling. Part of me felt sick, like I was violating something sacred. Family was supposed to mean trust. But I realized that was the lie I'd been sold. The truth was, family had been using me as their safety net for years. And now, I was going to pull that net away and let them fall. The next morning, I slipped into the resort's dining hall early, before the guests gathered for brunch. I needed to blend in, be seen as just another smiling relative here to celebrate love, not the woman plotting their downfall. I made polite conversation, laughing at jokes that made my skin crawl, all while keeping an ear out for loose tongues. By noon, Jake called. "You're not going to like this," he said. "I got into your mom's checking account history. She made a wire transfer, $25,000, to the resort 2 months ago. Same week she told you she was short on groceries." I closed my eyes, teeth grinding. What about Madison? Nothing directly. But there's something weird. I found an insurance policy under her name. Your dad took it out years ago. It's specific. How specific? Jake hesitated. $50,000. Payable only if Madison is married before her 30th birthday. My stomach dropped. Her birthday was in 2 weeks. That's why they rushed the wedding, I murmured. It's not just my money. It's Dad's policy. I thought it was weird. I dug deeper. Your dad had a second policy too, one for you. But it was cancelled the year before he died. The breath left my lungs. He cancelled mine? Looks like it. Shifted everything into Madison's name. I leaned against the wall, fighting the familiar ache in my chest. I had always suspected Dad favored her, she was the charming one, the easy one. But this felt like proof, written in ink and numbers. Jake's voice softened. I'm sorry. I swallowed hard. No. Don't be. This is exactly what I needed. I spent the next few hours gathering what I could. Screenshots of Madison's posts. Copies of my bank statements showing the missing funds. Every message my mother had sent over the past 2 months. I built a file, a dossier of their deceit. That evening, I sought out Aunt Lisa. If there was one person who valued truth more than keeping the peace, it was her. We found a quiet corner in the lounge. I know about the insurance policy, I started. Her eyes widened, but she didn't deny it. Your father thought he was protecting her. He worried about Madison, thought she needed stability. And me? My voice cracked. What did he think I needed? Lisa's face softened. He thought you'd be fine. You always figured things out. You were strong. Strong. That word again. The word they used every time they needed me to carry more. I need you to tell me everything, I said. Lisa sighed, then told me what I already suspected. Dad had debts. Loans he'd taken out to cover bad investments. When he died, he left behind more than grief, he left a ticking bomb. The insurance policy was his backup plan. If Madison married, it would trigger the payout, just enough to clear his remaining debts. You were never supposed to find out, Lisa said. Your mom thought she was protecting his memory. Protecting him, I whispered. Not me. Lisa placed a hand on mine. What are you going to do? I didn't answer. Not yet. That night, I slipped into the reception hall while the wedding planners were setting up. I introduced myself as the bride's sister and asked about final invoices. Most vendors were happy to chat, especially when I hinted at a potential future event for my business. One caterer mentioned a check that had bounced, just last week. A florist complained about late payments. The DJ said he was paid in cash, handed over by my mom the day before. It was all unraveling. The final piece came from Ryan himself. I found him alone by the fire pit, sipping whiskey. It's all so perfect, he said. Your mom and Madison really pulled it off. They told me about your contribution. You're amazing. I smiled, but my hands were cold. Ryan, can I ask you something? Did you know about the insurance policy? He frowned. Insurance? From my dad. The one that pays Madison if she gets married before she's 30. His face went blank. What the hell are you talking about? I knew then, he was as much a pawn as I was. The next morning, Jake emailed me everything he had: bank statements, insurance forms, payment records. I printed them all, placing them in a neat folder. I tucked it into my purse, next to the handwritten speech I had prepared, what was supposed to be a toast celebrating their union. Now, it was something else. A loaded weapon. The wedding was tomorrow. I had everything I needed. Have you ever reached that point when you realize you're done being the strong one? When you know it's time to show them exactly what you're capable of? Comment 444 if you're ready to see what happens next. The morning of the wedding dawned crisp and clear, the kind of Colorado morning my dad would have loved. He used to say the mountains looked their best when the air was sharp enough to sting your lungs. But as I stood by the window of my resort room, clutching the folder of documents that held the truth, the lies, the theft, the betrayal, I felt none of that beauty. I felt rage. Cold, clear, and calculated. The dress I chose was deliberate, crimson red, bold, and impossible to ignore. A color that said, "Look at me." A color that promised I wasn't here to blend in or play along. I was here to end this. I slipped it on slowly, watching my reflection as though I were armoring up for battle. The silk hugged my frame perfectly, the neckline sharp but elegant. I curled my hair, painted my lips to match the dress, and slid into my heels. Every detail was precise, every choice intentional. I was done being their shadow. Jake knocked lightly before stepping in. He gave a low whistle. "Damn, Em. You look like a walking warning label." "Good," I said, fastening a delicate bracelet Dad had given me when I turned 21. The last real gift before his debt swallowed him whole. "They should feel warned." Jake's eyes softened. "Are you sure about this? Once you do this, there's no taking it back." I met his gaze in the mirror. "They took everything from me. They think I'll always forgive them. It's time they learn the truth has a price." He nodded. "I've got your back." Together, we made our way to the ceremony. The outdoor space was breathtaking, white chairs lining a path leading to a floral arch with the mountains as a backdrop. Everything was pristine, perfect, and paid for with my stolen money. Guests arrived in waves, hugging and laughing, oblivious to the rot beneath the surface. I spotted my mother near the front, her eyes widening when she saw me. She hurried over. "Emily," she whispered sharply. "What are you doing?" "Supporting my sister," I said sweetly. "Isn't that what family does?" Her eyes flickered with panic. "Please. Not today." I leaned in, voice cold. "You don't get to ask me for anything. Not anymore." Before she could respond, the music started. Everyone turned toward the aisle. Madison appeared, glowing in white lace, looking every bit the princess she had always seen herself as. She smiled, but her eyes darted when they found mine. I smiled back, wide and sharp. Her steps faltered. The ceremony was brief, all soft words and forced promises. When they said "I do," the crowd erupted into cheers. But my applause was slow and deliberate, a drumbeat of what was coming. Cocktail hour followed. I mingled, sipped champagne, smiled through gritted teeth. I spoke with Ryan briefly. He seemed happy, glowing even. He still had no idea his new wife had sold him a lie. I waited for the reception. The hall was stunning, soft lights, white roses, crystal chandeliers. Every detail dripped with elegance. Every detail had been funded by my sacrifices. Dinner was served. Toasts began. First, my mother spoke, her voice trembling slightly but keeping up the facade of the proud mother. Then Madison's maid of honor, a sorority sister who had barely known her for a year, gave a speech about friendship and forever love. Finally, it was my turn. I stood slowly, taking the microphone. The room quieted. All eyes turned to me, the sister who had worked in the background for so long, now standing center stage. I smiled, holding the mic with practiced ease. For those of you who don't know me, I'm Emily Parker. The bride's sister. The uninvited sister, actually. Soft laughter rippled through the room. People thought I was joking. I wasn't. But I'm here today because, well, family is complicated, isn't it? My voice was steady, but there was an edge beneath it. Family is about love, support, and sometimes, family is about sacrifice. I glanced at Madison. She was stiff, her smile frozen. For 2 years, I saved up $50,000 to bring our family together for a reunion, to honor our late father. A man who worked himself to the bone in those mountains so we could have a better life. That money was meant to create memories. It was meant to heal. But instead, I paused, letting the silence stretch. It was stolen. By my mother. And by my sister. They took every cent to pay for this wedding. Gasps erupted. Whispers spread like wildfire. Every flower, every glass of champagne, every crystal hanging from that chandelier, you paid for it? No, I paid for it. Without my knowledge. Without my consent. Madison shot up from her chair. Emily. I'm not finished, I said, cutting her off, my voice slicing through the murmurs. There's more. You see, this wedding wasn't just about love. It was about money. An insurance policy my father took out before he died, $50,000, payable only if Madison married before her 30th birthday. Ryan stiffened beside her. They didn't tell you that, did they, Ryan? I turned to him. This wedding was rushed because Madison's birthday is in 2 weeks. If she wasn't married by then, the payout was gone. Ryan's face drained of color. He looked at Madison, betrayal flooding his features. Is that true? His voice was low, dangerous. Ryan, Madison stammered, tears welling up. It's not like that. I love you. It was just, the timing. He pushed back his chair. You married me for money? Guests shifted awkwardly, some pulling out their phones. This wasn't a wedding anymore. It was a spectacle. My mother stood, her face pale. Emily, please. No, Mom, I snapped. You chose her. You chose lies. You chose theft. Now, you live with it. Ryan stormed out. Madison chased after him, sobbing. The train of her gown tangled around her feet as she stumbled, mascara streaking down her face. Guests whispered in clusters, some watching with thinly veiled glee. This was the kind of drama people would talk about for years. My mother sank back into her seat, defeated. Aunt Lisa approached me slowly, her face a mixture of sadness and pride. You did what had to be done. I nodded, my pulse still racing. But beneath the adrenaline, there was a strange calm. For the first time in my life, I had chosen myself. Jake appeared at my side, his grin both amused and impressed. Remind me never to cross you. I let out a breath, half laugh, half relief. I turned back to the microphone, raising my glass. To the truth, I said. It may not always be pretty, but it's always better than a lie. Have you ever had to stand up to the people you love most? Have you ever had to choose yourself over family? Comment 555 if you think this was the justice I deserved. 3 months later, the snow had melted, giving way to the crisp, early bloom of spring in Denver. Life had begun to thaw with the season, but the coldness left behind by that disastrous wedding day still lingered, especially within my family. Some wounds take longer to heal, and some, I've learned, never truly do. The fallout had been swift and merciless. Madison's marriage was over before the ink on the marriage certificate had dried. Ryan left town within a week, moving to Seattle for a new job, a fresh start, far away from the mess he had unknowingly married into. He didn't respond to Madison's calls or texts, and when I ran into his cousin at a furniture showroom, I heard he'd filed for an annulment. Part of me felt sorry for him. He was collateral damage in a family war he never asked to be part of. But mostly, I felt relieved. He deserved better. We all did. Madison didn't get off as easily. The truth about the stolen money, the insurance scheme, and the lies that unraveled in front of their guests followed her like a scarlet letter. Aspen's social circles are tighter than they seem. Her name was whispered at every brunch, her downfall shared like gossip over lattes. Her Instagram, once a highlight reel of curated perfection, had gone silent. I heard from Aunt Lisa that Madison was doing community service, court-ordered, after some minor fraud charges stuck when the resort brought up the bounced checks. I saw her once, picking up trash along the highway, wearing an orange vest that clashed with the designer sneakers she had clearly tried to salvage from her old life. Our eyes met briefly, through my car window. She looked away first. My mother, well, her apology came eventually, but it was wrapped in excuses. She called me one Sunday afternoon, voice softer than usual, almost timid. "I'm sorry, Emily," she said. "I should have handled things differently. I should have protected you better." It was the closest thing to accountability I'd ever get from her. And maybe it was genuine. Maybe it wasn't. But I was tired of analyzing every word that came out of her mouth, wondering what the angle was. I accepted her apology, but I kept my distance. I had spent my whole life trying to earn my place in that family. I finally realized I didn't need to. Letting go of that need was the real freedom. I channeled every ounce of anger, betrayal, and hurt into something productive, my business. Parker Interiors had been doing well before the wedding, but now it was thriving. Jake had pushed me to expand, and after everything settled, I finally did. 3 weeks after I exposed my family's lies, I signed the lease on a second showroom in Boulder. It was bigger, brighter, and right in the heart of a growing design district. We launched with an opening party, nothing extravagant, just drinks, music, and good people. People who valued honesty, hard work, and integrity. People I had chosen to surround myself with. Jake was by my side that night, as he had been through everything. I watched him charm clients with his quick wit, his eyes flicking to mine every so often with that familiar warmth. We had always had chemistry, but it had been buried under friendship, timing, and our mutual stubbornness. That night, though, something shifted. After the last guest left, and we stood in the showroom surrounded by half-empty wine glasses and scattered brochures, he turned to me. "You know," he said, leaning against a reclaimed wood table we had both hand-picked, "we make a damn good team." I smiled. "Yeah, we do." His eyes held mine, a little more serious this time. Maybe we could be more than just a team at work. For a second, I felt that old fear creeping in, the one that told me love complicated things, that relationships always came with expectations and disappointments. But then I looked at Jake. He had seen me at my lowest and never once flinched. He had stood beside me while I tore down the facade of my family. He had never tried to take from me, only give. "Maybe we could," I said softly. We didn't label it that night, but something started. Something real. Success tastes different when it's built on your own terms. For the first time in my life, I wasn't building for someone else, I was building for me. My father's legacy was complicated. His secrets nearly destroyed us. But my legacy? It would be different. The reunion fund I had dreamed about no longer existed. That vision of us all together by the lake, laughing under the sun, was gone. But I realized something. I didn't need that picture-perfect version of family. Family wasn't defined by blood or obligation. It was the people who stood by you when the walls crumbled. The ones who held you up when you had nothing left. People like Jake. Like Aunt Lisa. Like the small team I had built at Parker Interiors, people who believed in me, not because they had to, but because they chose to. I still talk to my mom occasionally. Holidays, mostly. Our conversations are polite, careful. She's trying, I'll give her that. But I no longer expect more than she's capable of giving. And that's okay. Madison? We haven't spoken since that day on the highway. I hear things through Lisa, she's trying to find a job, trying to start over. Part of me hopes she figures it out. But I'm not waiting around to see if she does. I finally learned that sometimes, the best revenge isn't exposing someone or watching them fall apart. It's living well. Thriving. Being so undeniably happy and successful that the people who tried to break you have no choice but to see you shining. That's what I'm doing now. I wake up every morning with a sense of peace I never thought I'd have. My business is growing. My heart is open, tentatively, but open. And for the first time in years, I feel free. Sometimes, the best revenge is living your best life. What about you? Have you ever had to cut ties with someone you loved to finally find your peace? Comment 666 if you believe that strong women will always come out on top. Looking back on everything, the lies, the betrayal, the pain, I realized that what hurt the most wasn't the money they took. It was the way they saw me. The way they treated me like I was only worth what I could give. Like my value was measured by the bills I paid, not the person I was. But standing here now, stronger and freer than I've ever been, I know this, I am more than what I can provide. My worth isn't tied to my bank account or the sacrifices I make for others. My worth is mine. I learned that choosing myself didn't make me selfish. It made me free. And I know I'm not alone. I know there are so many of you out there, women who have given everything to your families, your partners, your friends, only to be left feeling empty. Women who've been told you're strong, just so people can pile more weight onto your shoulders. Women who've been made to feel like you have to earn love, as if you weren't already worthy of it. So, I want to ask you. Have you ever felt like you were being taken for granted? Like your kindness was being mistaken for weakness? Have you ever reached that point where you had to choose yourself, even if it meant walking away from the people you loved? If you've been there, or if you're going through it right now, share your story in the comments. Let's support each other. Let's remind each other that we're not alone. Because the truth is, sometimes the hardest thing we'll ever do is stand up and say, enough. But once you do, once you choose yourself, that's when you start to really live. So, tell me, have you ever had to fight for your worth? Share your experience below. Your story might be the strength another woman needs today. And if my story resonated with you, if you believe that every woman deserves to stand tall and own her power, share this video. Send it to someone who needs to hear it. Help us build a community of strong, independent women who lift each other up. And don't forget, hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications. This is just one story, but there are so many more to tell. Stories of resilience, revenge, and rising above. Stories of women like you and me, who refuse to be defined by what was taken from us. Because we are more than what we've lost. We are what we choose to build. Thank you for watching. And remember, sometimes, the best revenge is living your best life.